All right, guys. So today's comic is called The First Hero. So the comic book is a kind of unique take on a superhero mythos. So it tackles this concept. What if everyone who ever had superpowers had gone insane and become a threat to society? What if after decades of this, one man gains abilities far beyond those of mortal men, but he keeps his sanity? So this follows a Jacob Roth who was recently discharged from the army and is faced with a society that fears superhumans. So it does kind of take a superhero trope, like some comics that we know, Marvel, DC. But so I guess Dan, what did you think of the story first?
I like the story. Honestly, I feel like I'm forgetting a lot of it.
I'll agree. It was very forgettable.
Yeah, it read well. There was a few parts that were very long-winded, like two paragraph chat bubbles that extended into the next fucking panel. That's a bit much
Yeah.
information. Like, tell me more about him later, bro. Let's get on to something else for a minute. But it wasn't bad. Yeah, it wasn't like the worst thing I've ever read. You know, it had a good story. I kept reading. I was interested in what was going to happen, and it did leave me wondering where the story went. So it wasn't horrible.
Yeah, I agree with Daniel. I thought it was all right. I guess I stopped reading for about an hour and then came back to it at about page 10. It had a slow start. You know what I mean? But after page 10, it did get a little more interesting. The story was a little more compelling, like the whole mom and the money and the little girl and Robin Banks with her and stuff. I wanted to hear what she was gonna have because she's gonna put her daughter on the phone and be like, "Here's what I want you to tell them." They're gonna go visit her dad, but she's gonna, it's out of
Have
vengeance.
fucking
So
yeah.
what is she gonna have this little girl say? So there were a few things in that kept me interested in the book and wanted me to read more, but I don't think it was enough for me to want to go buy or spend $5 on an issue. You know, yeah,
Fair.
it was just like you've said, it was a bit of all right.
It was I kind of felt the same way. So I guess we kind of all three agree on this one. Um, the story was very, to me, it was old fashioned. It was a very
Mm,
old fashioned story,
Yeah, yeah,
and so to me it was reminiscent. There's that word again. It was reminiscent of like a classic, early on Marvel story.
yeah.
Like the way they used to tell these stories in old Marvel comic books, they were a lot slower paced, because back then people had more time to sit down and read these really slow started stories. But it had this like classic feel to it, like
Uh,
from way back when. I said way back when you guys were born around this time.
10,000 BC, right?
Oh
you're right.
yeah.
Nice one.
Dude, I couldn't resist that one. But overall, the story was just, yeah, very slow. As far as it leaving me wanting to keep reading, no, I'm with Bob on that one. It did not leave me wanting to go buy issue two, like in
Yeah.
any hurry.
I think the only thing really this comic had going for the best thing about this comic was them forcing those people to rob this bank and then having them shoot them. And when she said shoot yourself as many times as you can, right? I was
Bro.
like, damn, like not
Yeah,
just shoot
yeah, yeah,
himself,
me
but shoot
too.
like as many times as you can. I was like, now that was fucking harsh, bro. That was some deep shit.
Can we talk
That was
about that when they showed all of their faces, like with the gun pointed in like different
yeah,
parts?
Man,
excellent. Yeah, yeah.
those
That spread was so
faces,
cool.
beautiful. Oh my god, that whole lineup of panels was.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could be wrong, and they might be able to live up to that kind of stuff in the next book. But I just
It's
Well,
don't think
possible.
I don't think they will. Go ahead, Daniel.
I think they might, right? Because that part of the story was kind of the most compelling part with the little girl and the mom, and whatever her power is, obviously mind control. The next book is called Wednesday's Daughter or something, and it's that little girl a couple of years older looking. Like,
Yeah, I think it might be her own comic because it says the first hero, Wednesday's Child, #1.
Huh.
So it might be her own shit. Maybe I will look into this a little bit more.
like even the random people that were in the bank shot, which again, amazing shot. That bank shot, there had to have been close to 20 people.
Yeah.
Full
Yeah,
characters, and
yeah.
every one of them were completely different in their size, shape, features, what they
Clothing.
were doing, like
Yeah.
everything. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think they did really well with that.
Yeah.
As far as like the characters for me, again, it started having that familiar Marvel feel, because this was like, I mean, Captain America meets who? Like my wife said, maybe the Human Torch, but basically it just had that kind of feel, they went with the soldier trope, and how, at first he obviously didn't have his powers, and then it just seems that in the heat of battle, maybe that's what I'm inferring from the stuff that they referred to, that in the heat of battle he must have like gained his powers at like the last minute to like save the day.
Yeah, they said something about, because it was a different universe, and there was the medulla. He was using his equipment. He had his gear on, and his tech is what made him be able to utilize his powers. So he was trying to do it on his own back in his own universe. So I don't think that.
And more on that, it seems that they were working together, because if you look at that whole dream sequence that they introduce him with, the guy literally takes a knife and stabs him in the back. Like that's a symbolic.
Brutus, even.
Brutus,
yeah.
I mean, like, obviously they went with that trope, so it did feel a little familiar as far as his character went, so that made it a little predictable for me. So again, like when a story is predictable, then I have a hard time enjoying it, because then I just start dissecting it. Like that trope kind of took me out of the story.
There's two characters I did not like at all. Poorly written, poorly designed, and they didn't seem real. And it's the fucking two deli characters that were selling her a pack of cigarettes.
Oh,
these fucking idiots. They made them the stupidest fucking clerks that they could ever come up with. And then their slang and the vernacular and way they speak. I feel like the author got all of this. He's only ever seen like the streets on TV and in movies. You know what I mean? It just seemed.
Well, you know what it was? Because I pointed that out to my wife when I read. I was like, where is this? Because like the way they were talking. This comic takes place in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
But they were talking like they were straight out of Alabama.
Bro, it made no sense.
Yeah, it made no sense. Like they were kind of out of place. Because I had to point it out. I even asked my wife. I was like, where does this, like
you got somewhere like Philly, bro, that you've got to stay with that kind of regional dialect.
Right.
You can't just switch. And they did it midstream. They was leaving off R's and dropping an A, and then in another word they threw an R in where it didn't belong. It's like, who the fuck says that? That didn't make no sense. I was like, y'all got all your slang mixed up. This dude literally had got all his research on fucking, watching White Man Can't Jump or something. Like, what the fuck is going on?
Unless that character has some reason to be speaking that way, like from another area, then that's established. But just a couple of guys from that area should definitely be speaking that dialect, at the very least.
Yeah. How did you guys feel about the world in the comic?
I love how you're just pacing art to the end, like it's all the marshmallows cereal.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God, you do that too. I'm so glad you do that too. My wife was literally ridiculing me the other day, talking about that's how you eat your Lucky Charms. I'm like, that's the only way to eat Lucky Charms.
Bro, come on. And listen, I'm 41, so if that gives you anything to think of.
Yeah.
Oh God. What was the question?
I wanted to say about the mother first, real quick, about the character.
Go for it.
This little girl's mother is evil, man.
Oh my God.
She is a bitter.
Yeah, that's her superpower.
Evil. Yeah, she is a bitter woman, man. That poor little That's probably why in her own comic book she's sitting there on this empty page.
Just
and
lost, yeah.
She's at the very corner of her own comic book. Just
Hiding,
fucking
just
lost,
slumped.
hiding, because of that bitch right there. So, that's
Crazy. Oh, and 200K off the first lick, and y'all can't fucking go back to the Philippines, bro. What's
right?
2 tickets?
You could be like,
What's 2 tickets? $1,000? Get the fuck out of here. One way.
Like
That's it.
Spirit, bro. You could probably do it for $250.
And then the fucking exchange rate over there. You know what I mean? Like exchanging
Come
dollars.
on, bro. They show up as billionaires.
Yeah, they leave like
Yeah.
kings, man.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
so
she's just
funny.
evil, and she can't leave without the old man, her ex-old man, and his new wife suffering.
Yeah, getting fucked.
And money ain't enough.
I love how when she lit the cigarette, they had her slump back like a fucking kingpin, like, some real deal evil villain.
All
She's
right.
probably gonna end up being the most fucking evil person in the narrative. Like,
Close
Yeah.
up on her, with the
they're
smoke coming out of her mouth, and that little close up, man.
I think that further proves what you were saying, Dan, about how like this little girl is gonna be pivotal in this narrative.
yeah.
Because like as long as the mom controls that little girl, I mean, that's a hell of a power to just be able to control people's minds like that.
Right, but she gets older. I feel like the little girl's gonna end up being main good guy.
This chick and her whole demeanor in this scene where she's sitting in front of this money, like,
Mm-hmm.
this pile of money in front of her, and all she can think about is her ex-husband and his new wife and how they need to pay her a visit. And I really like to know what she's going to tell her daughter to tell them over the phone. I mean, do they?
That's what I mean. There were some things that kept me wanting to, like, okay, what next?
Yeah.
But what happened to the little girl? Like, the book ended, and I'm like, but what happened?
World building. How did you guys feel about the world that they were in?
I like the world. I thought it was interesting, like how many, like he's the only sane. Well, I guess we're missing a lot, because if he's the only sane superpowered one, then this place should be overrun. Have you seen the video game for Arkham Asylum where everybody escapes and the city's flooded and shit? That's what this place should look like if he's the only superhero. But it doesn't look like that. Like, he's in this nice countryside shooting at stuff.
His random neighbor walks up and he's like, "Sorry if I'm on your property, bud." Like,
like what? So I guess it's pretty inconsistent, I guess I would say, now that I think about it.
Yeah, I agree with that, because so we're supposed to be in this world where people with superpowers are going crazy, but we didn't really see any of that.
Yeah.
And they're trying to say
Just
that
the
he's the
girl.
only sane one, but if they hadn't told us that, we wouldn't have known. There's nothing in the story to suggest that he was the only sane one.
right.
Because we didn't have anyone to compare him to. Yeah, like, I mean, sure, you got this lady that's like robbing a bank, but that's just okay. You're showing us a villain, but show us some like crazy people on the street, screaming or like, doing some weird.
Yeah, there was literally no one else.
The whole book, you assume that everyone else is just going on about their business. There's no damage to the
seems.
building. You know what I mean?
Buses, like regular infrastructure, is still running. She gets to the bank on the bus. She leaves the bank on a bus.
Right.
Like, everything's just fucking normal. The banks are still operating.
Yeah, right. Like,
You know?
So I guess that part of the world I was imagining in my own. I guess I superimposed that onto that, because now I'm like, none of that is here. There's none of it.
I think I just put blinders onto it.
Yeah, not one broken window. There should be at least a broken
Nothing.
window.
Not a lick of
Yeah,
chaos.
Right.
There was nothing to suggest that this was a world of like anarchy or anything like that. Or that there were crazy people in general. Because okay, you got this one lady that robbed the bank, but where's everything else?
Yeah.
I don't know, that was kind of confusing.
I felt like I was reading, like you said, like Spider-Man could have swung in this bank at any moment. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm looking at it now with the heist, and like everyone is drawn well. It does have this simplicity to it, but it's done in a way where everything Like this guy, you can see the hair in this dude's arms, but this guy doesn't have hair. So they took the time to characterize each one of these guys. I thought it was pretty nice. There was some areas where it was a little wonky. You know, I was like, but most of it, I think it held up pretty good in my eyes. Okay. What do you think, Greg?
You know, I agree. Because I'm looking at that shot that Daniel points out, and it is true. Like they added, it's not necessary, but it works. Like all the detail that they added, extra detail. You know, like it's not necessary, but I'm glad they did it because it added so much to the chaos of that scene. There's something happening everywhere in this shot. Everywhere that you look on the page, there is a different situation going on, and I thought that was really cool. But for me, like that whole sequence leading up to them being inside the bank, it gave me that. You remember the Dark Knight, the second Christopher Nolan Batman?
Yeah.
They're showing like the Joker's preparing and approaching the bank, and then finally they like rob the bank. It gave me that same kind of feel, like, you know, it showed them entering the bank, and then it like shows them all together. Then they kind of look separate, but they're not really separate. You can tell they're a unit. And then all of a sudden, the little girl just activates them, and then, you know, boom, chaos. It was pretty cool.
I had to go back and look once they all ran in. I was like, hold on. Were the people on the fucking side, like, was that who just ran in? I had to go back, and they all had the green duffel bags. I was like, no shit.
I do have one complaint about the art, but the thing is that they made up for it, so I can't complain about it too much, was that in spite of this other detail that they would add to, you know, these really big panels, the art was overall too simple for me. I guess, like, for me, comics, they have to have a certain level of art and beyond, because anything less just it starts to kind of look like a newspaper comic strip. You know, like,
I guess I could see that.
They omitted detail as far as the actual illustration of the characters went, and then they made up for it by adding all this extra stuff in each panel. So I guess that's a good question. Is like, how do you guys feel? Would you prefer having less detail in the art, more details in the panels, or would you prefer to have more details on the art, a little less detail, you know, as far as the orientation of the panels?
I feel like it depends on, like, I don't feel like the characters themselves, that go back to the bank scene, needed a ton of detail. But
well, I mean, like, if I were to ask you to compare, like, for example, the bank scene with the same amount of detail, but with the same amount of detail, now we go to the part where he's waking up from that dream and he's just in his apartment. So you have this very still.
But I feel like that was a good scene too. Like I liked the way that was
visually
drawn,
it was cool.
Yes.
I mean, like, I'm talking about like the detail of the art.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like.
Yeah, it was still really simple, and there was more focus on one singular character than it felt like some was left out. Yeah. But again, the panels and the way it was, the way it laid out, still worked really well for me. Yeah.
I thought like you said earlier, like once you got to his story, it was like, oh, okay, here, what are we doing? Like, you asked the question, more detail, or, you know, about, well, I gotta say, if I had to choose between the two, I would choose the more detail over the art, because I think the all that stuff going on within that scene really helps with the scene. It reminded me of Point Break. First time they come in and they're jumping all over the counters and shit, you know what I'm saying? Like, a lot going on. And it gave me that vibe in one full page panel. You know what I'm saying? That's all they did for that. And it took them, 2.5 minutes to show that scene in a movie, you know, of the chaos and everything. And they did it with one panel with all those little details that they put in. So I appreciated that, because I think those little details do help tell the story better than the more detail into the art itself, you know.
Yeah, I mean, like, I guess I could kind of agree. Like, adding all these different situations does give the viewer a lot to see in a single panel, but then also help with the world building, because that's kind of what they lack, because it seems that they kind of picked one. They didn't do both, like We Have Demons did, you know. And the one that they picked was extra details, like in the backgrounds of the panels, but not so much in the art. So it's like going one way, I don't think is the way to go. Definitely the way we have Demon's Wind, where you kind of do a little bit of both, is cool. But they weren't consistent with it. You know, like the bank scene was awesome because it worked out. They gave all this detail, added all this atmosphere. But then when we get to him, all of a sudden all that atmosphere goes away,
Yeah.
and it doesn't hold up.
Yeah, even the close-ups are really, really blank, just lines drawn for
Yeah.
features.
That's why I asked, like, how do you guys feel about it? Because, you know, it's just like as an artist, sometimes you do find yourself where you have to pick, especially for the sake of time. You know, it's like you either gotta like go ham on the backgrounds or go ham on the characters. I prefer to go a little more on the characters because backgrounds to me are a little tedious to do.
Does that child and woman ever mentioned again after you get into his story? I don't think they are.
So.
Yeah, so they just completely.
Which is what I want to. I want to read that. I don't want to read the second hero.
Yeah, I don't want that. Yeah, yeah, they should have just kept on with that story. I mean, he may very well be her ex-husband. I don't know, but they should have just left this shit out until she got to wherever he is, and then introduced him. All you did is follow her through this whole story, right? This whole 28 whatever pages was about her and wherever she was going, and then say at the very end you met him, right? And then the second book you told whatever story he is, had her, you know, the little girl and the woman story, like when they left to go to the father or whatever adventure they were the main characters of this book. If you'd have told that story from them, I would have wanted to read more. Well, I don't know, because they would have anyway.
Now in that animation, he stops writing and just crumbles the page up and throws it.
It's just like, well, anyway. yeah. I like that. But Dan, what do you got, man, for storytelling, visual storytelling?
Well, I ain't gonna hold you up too much. I really want to hear what you got to say about it. I think we've kind of already. I think you've been holding back, waiting to do this part, because me and Bob's been talking about how we feel about the visual storytelling pretty much the whole show.
Bob, what about you, Bob? What about you?
But I personally thought the flow was awesome. It really did. For me, it helped tell the story. It helped keep me stay involved in it, because the story itself, the dialogue itself was, you know, long-winded. The art was the best part of the comic, especially the first half of the book. The second half, you know, but the first half, I really, really enjoyed the first half of this book. All right, your turn.
All right. I'm about to unleash here, man. So, I mean, the visual storytelling was my absolute favorite part about this comic book, because what you guys pointed out, even though the dialogue was dull, the story arc was kind of, you know, meh. You know, we've seen it before and whatnot. The way the story was told was fucking cool. So, like, the one thing that immediately stood out to me was that the way the paneling was done was very well thought out. That's where I disagree with Bob on it, you know, going stagnant after the second half, because it was consistent all the way through. The paneling was the way they paneled. If you guys notice, you know, you got this whole bank scene and all the panels are evenly spaced out and, you know, in order. They're all, you know, kind of the same size overall. So this is what I call that stagnant paneling. But then all of a sudden, when they get to this part where everybody is like holding the guns to the, you know, to their heads, there's tension in that panel, and all of a sudden the panels are like askew and off kilter. And there's like little details like that, like set that tension in that whole area, which was really cool. And then immediately you get into the second half, and this guy's having a fight with this guy, and all the panels are like layered on top of each other in different sizes. There's a very animated way of paneling the whole comic. Absolutely loved it. I loved it. Like that, the way they paneled it was awesome. The one thing I can point out about when they switched to different scenes is, I think one of the reasons we like these scenes more is because they give us more in their scenes.
Right.
Than his scenes. His scenes are very, tropic, very stagnant. But with them,
Yeah.
like, you notice that they didn't just start straight with the everybody, get down. They could have, but they didn't. They showed the bank. They showed them in front of the bank. They showed them stepping up. Then they got into the bank. When you see the little girl leave the convenience store, they didn't just break into her opening her apartment door and mom has cash on the table. They showed her leave the store. They showed her cross the street. They showed
Get
her
to
go
the
up the
house.
stairs. Like
Yeah.
they, it was a different vibe. And I think we liked that vibe better than his vibe. When they were showing John, what is it, John or Jason? Roth?
I don't remember.
Roth.
I don't even remember.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's how memorable he was.
Yeah.
So it's like they had these little things that, again, they're not necessary, but you're glad they're there.
Right.
I feel like they're necessary if they want us to read Wednesday's Child, which, by the way, I do want to. Like,
Yeah,
we
yeah.
definitely need to get our hands on.
Yeah, we should.
But for me, there were certain things also of like the paneling of this one is that they pull one of these things that I fucking love when they do this in comics, where you have two different panels but it's all one shot.
Yeah.
Creates this movement on the page. And so I look at the page 17 when she is crossing the street, gets to the apartment building and then goes up the stairs, goes to her door. If you see like the movement that her character does on that page, she does the spiral of the stairs in those first 4 panels, which gave the shot of the stairs so much movement. Because she's crossing the street, and then she's at her apartment building, and then she's at her apartment door, and then like the stairs just continue that little spiral all the way down. Like
Right into the apartment.
like that's a beautiful movement on the page. And then boom, you enter the world where her mom is on the table, cash, and then smoking her cigarette. It was very well done. I liked it.
And the girl's face when she's looking at her mom, like, it's not as evil. It's more of like, man, like kind of maybe concern, but also contempt, on her face a little bit.
And they use the mom's arm to encompass her face, so it draws your attention there.
And the amount of cigarettes in that ashtray.
Exactly, yeah.
How much anger is in this woman, man. She is just unhappy. All that money in front of her, man, she is still just miserable as can be. Reading it again after Christian talks about it, I see it in a different light.
I always feel different about him when that's why I was like, I want to know what you got to say.
Well, that's the first hero. It gets one of these kind of like that a little bit. It is what it is, man. As usual, I don't know what's next week, so you just have to tune in to find out. See you guys then.